Someone you love just died. It happened suddenly. The body is right there. You have no hospital to call, no funeral home number to look up, no government form to fill out. There is no priest, no casket, no embalmer. It is just you and the people you live with, and a body that used to be a person, and the terrifying question of what you are supposed to do now. What do you do? This is not a hypothetical. This is the situation every single human being on Earth faced for almost the entire duration of our species' existence. And the answer they came up with, the thing they actually did, tells us something so fundamental about what we are as a species that honestly, it is a little uncomfortable. Because spoiler, they did not just leave the body and walk away. They did something much weirder, much more human, something you still do in a slightly different form every single time someone you know dies. We will get to that part. But first, let's go back to the very beginning of this story, which is much older and much stranger than you probably think. Here is a question scientists have been fighting about for decades. When did humans, or anything resembling humans, first start intentionally dealing with the dead? The boring assumption was that proper burial was a modern thing, a Homo sapiens thing, a sign of sophisticated big-brained culture that only our species was capable of. But then archaeology started doing what archaeology always does, which is quietly wrecking everything everyone thought they knew. In Iraqi Kurdistan, in a cave called Shanidar, archaeologist Ralph Solecki spent years in the 1950s and 60s digging up Neanderthal remains. Not one, not two, 10 Neanderthal individuals. Some of them appeared to have been deliberately placed in the ground, in flexed positions, knees drawn to the chest. One of them, nicknamed Shanidar 4, was surrounded by dense clusters of pollen from at least 8 flowering plant species. Solecki's interpretation was so romantic it became famous. The Neanderthals had buried their dead on a bed of flowers. He literally called his book Shanidar, the first flower people. Decades of debate followed. Some scientists said the pollen got there naturally, maybe carried by burrowing rodents. But a 2020 reinvestigation led by Emma Pomeroy at the University of Cambridge found a new articulated Neanderthal body in the same spot. And this time, the stratigraphic evidence pointed strongly toward intentional burial. The site may have been used repeatedly as a kind of burial ground, with a prominent rock possibly marking the location. Whether the flowers were real or just a nice story, the intentional placement appears to be genuine. Neanderthals were burying their dead roughly 70,000 years ago. And then it gets even stranger. There is a species called Homo naledi discovered in South Africa's Rising Star Cave system. Homo naledi had a brain about 1/3 the size of yours. They were not us. And yet in 2023, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger published research claiming that Homo naledi had been intentionally carrying bodies deep into this cave system through passages so narrow a modern human barely fits, and depositing them in specific spots going back possibly 240,000 to 335,000 years ago. The scientific community immediately started arguing about whether the evidence actually holds up. And that argument is still happening right now. But the mere fact that it is even a serious debate tells you something extraordinary. Intentional treatment of the dead might predate our own species entirely. Now here is the thing that should make you feel a little bit embarrassed. You know how whenever someone dies today, the people left behind immediately start making arrangements? Calling people, gathering together, making food, figuring out what to do with the body, sitting around telling stories about the person who is gone? You think that is a civilized modern thing, but ancient humans were doing all of this. Every part of it. The gathering, the stories, the careful treatment of the body, the marking of the place. The forms change. The instinct does not. The earliest unambiguous Homo sapiens burials show up around 120,000 years ago in the Levant, what is now Israel, Lebanon, Syria. Researchers from Tel Aviv University and the University of Haifa analyzed 32 ancient grave sites in the region, including 17 Neanderthal burials and 15 Homo sapiens burials. Both groups were doing it. Both were intentionally placing their dead in the ground. And the researchers found something fascinating. The frequency of burials seemed to increase when population density went up and competition for resources intensified. People buried their dead more carefully when life got more crowded and more competitive. Marking a grave, it turns out, may have been partly about territory. This is our place. These are our dead. We were here, now we get to the grave goods, because burying someone is one thing. But ancient humans did not just put bodies in the ground. They put stuff in there too. Tools, jewelry, food, pigments, flowers, carved objects. A young man buried in Paviland, Wales, about 33,000 years ago, was covered in red ochre and interred with mammoth ivory jewelry. He had been dead for tens of thousands of years when archaeologists found him, and they still called him the Red Lady. Because the burial was so elaborate, they assumed he must have been royalty. Think about what grave goods actually mean. You put something in the ground with a dead person because you believe, on some level, that they are going somewhere, that this is not the end. Anthropologists have a term for this: implicit afterlife beliefs. Research suggests that even people who explicitly say they do not believe in an afterlife still tend to act as if the dead person continues to exist in some form. We leave things at graves. We talk to dead people. We write messages to them. We bring them their favorite flowers. We are not being irrational. We are being profoundly, stubbornly human. Ancient Romans buried their dead with a coin to pay Charon, the ferryman, to get them across the river to the underworld. Ancient Chinese burned paper money and objects so the dead would have resources wherever they went. Ancient Egyptians buried their dead with maps. In case the afterlife was confusing to navigate. You think this sounds like a different world, but people today still tuck in a favorite book, still place a pair of glasses in the casket, still put a phone charger in the coffin because the family thought it was funny, and also, just in case. The impulse is identical. The packaging is different. Here is what all of this means when you put it together. For at least 70,000 years, and possibly much longer, human beings and our closest relatives have been doing the same thing when someone dies. We gather. We treat the body carefully. We mark the place. We put meaningful objects in there. We tell stories about the person. We grieve, visibly and collectively, in a way that says, this person mattered. This person was not just a body. Something needs to happen here that acknowledges who they were. There is a word for this in anthropology: mortuary behavior, and it is considered one of the clearest signals of abstract symbolic thinking. The moment a species starts treating its dead as something more than a biological problem to be solved, it has crossed a threshold. It is thinking about things it cannot see: souls, afterlives, meaning, the future itself, from the outside. You do this, too. Every single time, you call people, you gather, you put on clothes that feel appropriate for the occasion, you share food, you tell the funny story about the dead person that everyone at the table laughs at, even though they are also crying. You pick out what they are going to wear, you choose what to put in the casket, or the urn, or the memorial box. You stand somewhere and feel the full weight of the fact that someone who existed no longer does, and you refuse to just let that be unremarkable. A Neanderthal 70,000 years ago, carrying a body through a cave in Iraqi Kurdistan and laying it carefully in the ground with a rock marking the spot, was doing the exact same thing. Not because they read a book about it, not because a religion told them to, because something in them, something in us, insists that the dead deserve more than silence. So back to the question we started with. Someone you love just died. What do? You already know. You have always known. The answer is 70,000 years old at minimum, and it lives somewhere underneath every cultural variation and every different tradition and every different kind of funeral and grave and ceremony. You make it mean something. Because if there is one thing ancient humans taught us, one thing they kept doing, across hundreds of thousands of years and every continent on this planet, it is that the only thing worse than death is being forgotten. This video discusses anthropological and archaeological research for educational purposes. Modern hunter-gatherer observations are used as comparative models to understand ancient human behavior, not as definitive proof of how all ancient humans lived across different time periods and geographies.